What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and on this episode of the podcast, we are going to look at, I guess it's something that hinders a lot of people in their performance, in their way to be consistent, and really make a long-term change in their life. And this comes off the back of conversations that I had last week, where it's so common for people to, when you've been dealing with the same issue for a long period of time, that you often chop and change. And it's this idea of overthinking killing your progress. So one of the biggest problems I have to deal with when I work with someone, especially when you're looking at the chronic conditions more, is the indecision and the inconsistency, the chopping and changing, continuing to look for these new solutions all the time. And the fear that they actually need to do something new, when really it's more about being consistent in the things that they're already doing. And even when we lay this out, and we can lay out exactly what's going on, people who've been jumping around for years are going to struggle with something like that. The thing is that if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, or you don't know why you're doing it, you're going to have trouble being consistent. So if your goal is to get back to the gym, or get back running consistently, or get back into a team sport and do it without having pain or flare-ups, like, it's completely possible to get there. If it's back to running, or if it's getting back to cycling, we can do it. And if you're just looking to get back and enjoy your daily walk, that's all possible. But you need to first off have that goal set out. What people say too often is, I want to be out of pain all of the time. But that in itself becomes really challenging, because if you stub your toe, you're going to be back in pain. So it's understanding that, okay, we know what we're trying to get to, but it's not a race to get there. First off, we have to be patient, and we have to have some form of an objective measure as we're moving along that path to actually see the change. So then when you commit to something, you can actually commit to it, and you wait till you see the results. So when you're stopping and you're looking for results in the first day or the first week, you'll find that in every circumstance, you're going to see the negative change, especially if you've been in this loop for so long. So what we do is we understand that it's going to take a bit longer, and we plan accordingly. We build from there. Now, I do understand that it can be scary to try and improve, and it can be scary to be in pain and not know what's going on or why it's going on. And not understand why, even though you're doing everything right, you've been ticking all the boxes, you're still in this constant state of pain, the state where it's very difficult to break free from what you're doing. And it feels like you're trapped. And what happens here is, it's not the pain that becomes the biggest issue, it's actually the uncertainty that becomes a bigger problem. And you need to address that. Anxiety becomes a really overwhelming feeling, and everyone deals with it. It's inevitable. But it comes down to how you deal with it, how you deal with that uncertainty, that indecision, that place where you say, I need to change something. Now, it's important to get into that state first off to change, but then when you commit to a process, it's important then to stick on track. And one easy way to do this, one thing that we try to implement with all of our clients, is this idea that focusing on what you can do so the next day you'll be 1% better. Once you start to put these things in place, you're going to see improvement. But it's a waiting game. That's the unfortunate thing. And a lot of times you have more to process here. It's not just about the issue. You're dealing with a chronic injury. It's not just about the injury itself. It's about how the body reacts to it and responds and becomes protective. So you can't rush that, unfortunately. And if you allow it, the mind can start to run wild. And what will happen is you'll have this string of doubt. And we start to follow this down the path of despair. This is so common when you get into the state of looking on Google to figure out what your symptoms are. And then Google gives you the worst possible results. So you continue down that path, continue chasing it. And then you allow it to take over you. We become consumed by challenges we face and how things will never get better because we don't know any other way. And even when we start to train the mind to keep a lookout for this negativity, and if somebody mentions it to you, says, wow, that's a negative view you have on it, it has become such a part of who we are that we start to look at other people and say, what would you know? You don't know what pain is. You don't understand what I'm going through. And in this state of mind, it doesn't matter what evidence you're presented with of recovery, even if you've been shown that you have improved immensely since the start. At the start, you couldn't walk, now you can jog, now you can swim. Even if you're shown that evidence and objectively you can see it, you'll disregard it right away. Because you're now in this state of mind that it's impossible to see the positive. But unless you start to recognize this pattern and begin improving it, you will forever be stuck there. And that is just getting straight to the point, is that people say, like, oh, I don't want to be this focus on like positivity all the time. It's draining, it's difficult, it's whatever. It does take work. No one is saying to be positive all the time. But if you're enjoying being negative all the time, well, then you have to realize that that's going to have its impact on your life. So you need to be able to get into a positive state at times. And the thing is that I'm making this podcast to help you understand and help you to recognize this pattern so you can start working on it. Or you will forever be stuck in this negative pattern. And you will find that the people around you will, how would you say, slowly but surely dissipate and disappear. And it's about implementing the practice of mindfulness in one way, or of gratitude, times where you specifically just focus on the positives and what you have going for you. The practice of actually building on what you've achieved and what improvements you've made. Recognizing the smaller improvements. And this works alongside your rehab. You're doing your rehab, you're doing everything right, and then you start to take time to focus on the things that are working well. Recognize the factors in your life that have changed for the better. You may not be what you perceive as 100% just yet. I understand that. But if you don't begin to train yourself to actually see these improvements, how will you ever be what you consider 100%? Because you won't ever get to the point that you're going to look at something and you're going to say, oh, that's good. Because you'll continually look for what's bad. So this is a really important point. I think it's one that's overlooked by a lot of people. And it's overlooked in a lot of medical professions as well. Is that to actually see improvement, we need to focus on where the improvements are. And if you get to the point that you have made 100% improvement in your condition, in your activity, in that you've before you weren't able to do anything and now you can actually do things that you enjoy. If you haven't started to practice this gratitude and mindfulness and awareness of it, you're just going to focus on what you can't do. And you have to understand that this mindset itself is a black hole. It's going to suck energy and it's going to give you no return. But you will feel validated. You'll feel like, I'm right, whatever that means. And not only is it all consuming, and it'll cause you to feel that you're so right and so different to everyone around you that you're going to isolate yourself. And it'll be entirely your own doing. Think about this for a second. How often have you met an older person who is just not a joy to be around? They're having a difficult time or a difficult life, but they're constantly negative, constantly lonely, and just not a good energy. It's something that I'm always trying to be conscious of, if somebody is a good energy or not. And if someone's a bad energy, I try not to be around them. The thing is that in my situation, I have no problem around working with people, and I love to work with people who are committed to making change and want to make a change in their life. But if someone becomes a black hole where it's just constant like taking of energy and not giving anything back, or taking of energy and not actually trying to change it, or not trying to change anything, just there to live in that state and feeling validated in that state, I find that very challenging, because you have to be empathetic for these people, but the people also need to recognize themselves where they are becoming a drain, and when they need to make that change, and when they need to actually try to force themselves to see the light in things, in certain things. Now, that is going to be a very challenging idea to consider, and I understand that completely, that was a challenging idea. But I want to just make people aware of it, that there is a time that when things get so bad that it just comes back to, what can you focus on that's some way good in your life? What can you be grateful for today? Are you able to use all 4 limbs? Are you able to see? Do you have comfort? Do you have safety? Do you have a roof over your head? Do you have people that you can count on? Are you able to get up and move around? Even if it's not where you want to be, are you still able to do that? That's what you need to focus on at the start. You can see all the things you can do instead of all the things that you can't. And the thing is that we all need to see ourselves trying to improve, at least. I think that's a huge thing, and I don't want to go on too much more about it. It's more about, it's the gratitude. It's the understanding of where you're at and what you can improve on. Because in a lot of cases, if you start to just focus on that little bit of light, it becomes bigger. And you can train yourself to start to see it more. So if this is something that you think that you need to work on, there's lots of different ways of doing it. But honestly, if you just get out a journal and write down 2 to 3 things that you're grateful for, or if you spend 5 minutes sitting here and think of all the things that you're grateful for, I think that it really, really does have a huge impact on your life. And I'm in Brazil at the moment. I'm recording this, and when you see some of the people who go around the street and the challenges that they have, we were in a situation recently that was a very how would you describe it, challenging situation, dangerous situation you could say as well. But it was a young child who was about 8 years old, came into a bar and he was looking for money, and then the bouncer cleared him and he got him out of there, whatever. And you could see that obviously this child, because he returned, you could see that he was obviously having not a good time. There was bruising around the side of his face. He was only about 8 years old. And he picked up a brick and he threw the brick at the bouncer, and he missed him. Luckily, he actually hit the back of somebody's chair. And then he disappeared into the crowd. No one really saw it, or no one saw who threw the brick initially. And he came back about 5 minutes later after that, and this young child of 8 years old had broken a bottle and created a dagger out of it, and he was running towards the bouncer to try to stab him. And he was all calmed down, and somebody caught him by the hand and pulled him away. And in fairness, guys took him over to the side, and they were sitting, and he was crying, and they were talking to him about it, and they were chatting through it all, and you could see that he was visibly distressed. He's obviously had a really challenging life, and he's from one of the favelas nearby. I would imagine, or if he wasn't, he could be a street child, because they have those here as well. There's a lot of people here. It's not the same services as Ireland, where people can access service and then, especially underage, and then be put in a place where they can have a small bit of a safe haven. And the reason I say that, and people might be listening into this and say, oh, well, what would you know about it? And I have grown up in a privileged life, and I understand that. But my family as well, probably something that I never spoke about so much, but we've always taken in foster kids over the years, emergency foster also. And when you see these kids coming in from this situation where they need to get out of it, that's emergency fosters, they need to get out of a situation right away. And they're having a very, you could say, emotionally turbulent time in their lives. And you could see that in this kid. You could see that just from looking at him, that this poor guy, violence is all he knew. And it's the only way of life that he had. And I'm not exaggerating when I say he mustn't have been, if he was 8 years old, and he nearly put himself in a position that he had to go to juvenile or to jail for the rest of his life. And luckily the guys who took him over to the side never actually called the police, and they were able to talk him down and kind of chat through things. But that poor guy's situation, I imagine if he's on the street, it's not going to be rectified. And if he's going home to a situation that's not good, I don't know how that turns out for him. So when I talk to people, often when I'm chatting to people and with their situations and in pain, and their life has been completely put on hold, and there's huge challenges in their life, and they've had difficult upbringings, and they've had a difficult life, you always have to try in some way focus on some of the things that you may have today that you didn't have before, or that you have today that you might not have in future. And I think that's something that we don't do. You often don't appreciate those little things until they're gone from you. Like this idea of when the injuries is there in the background, and when the pain is there, and it's the only thing that you can focus on. It's the only thing that we start to focus on. But if we are just able to take a little bit of time, take a step back and realise that our situation, that there is some positives in our life, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, even though it feels like the end of the tunnel could be very, very long. But once you start working on it, once you start improving, once you start seeing the change, you have to highlight it, and you have to make it aware to yourself as well that I have improved a little bit here. If I continue down this path, there is a chance that I will get back to where I want to go. Because otherwise you're just going to put that aside and disregard it, and we're going to stay in that emotionally vulnerable state. So I only bring up the story about that young lad because it just made me think that some people's situations they don't get a chance. And they really don't get a chance at life. And especially kids, when you see it like that. And I've seen that throughout the years with people coming into the house and staying with us for a couple of days and longer. I see that a lot. That, yeah, not everyone has the same opportunity and has the same chance. And sometimes it's just about recognizing the good things that you have. But yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about today. I didn't mean to end that podcast on such a sad kind of a note, or a point of despair, but it hopefully at least highlights that in many situations things can be much more challenging, and that in the situation, whatever way or wherever you are, or whatever you're doing, or whatever type of life that you're living at the moment, I do hope that things start to improve for you. But while you're waiting for things to improve, try take that time to focus on the things yourself that are doing better and that are improving overall. And if there's anything at all that I can help with, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Robbie Cassidy _ on Instagram, or info@themobilitytutor.com is an email to get me at, or LinkedIn, Robbie Cassidy as well. They're probably the best places to contact me. And then, yeah, if you do need help with anything, if you're dealing with a chronic injury, just reach out and I'll see if there's anything I can do or point you in the right direction. Otherwise, that's all I'm going to chat about today on this podcast. It's just about recognizing the improvements. It's about being grateful for what we have and understanding that there can be light at the end of the tunnel. Things can be a lot worse. But you can only focus on what you can focus on. And you, as best you can, try to choose things that allow you to do better the next day and to be 1% better the day after. Otherwise, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love if you could send it to a friend or even rate it at the top. I want to get it up to 1,000 5-star ratings, as I always say, on Spotify and iTunes, and very far off that right now, but I know with that consistent change and just saying it to people that they do creep up, it's nice to see it each week just creeping away. And yeah, it just helps me promote the podcast and knows that I'm working in the right direction, and it's nice to see it ratings go up all the time as well. That's everything that I want to chat about today. Thank you all very much for listening in again, and I'll chat to you all very soon. Have a good one.